Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to CMKL Special Talk 2022. You are with me, Pataranutaporn, or you can call me Far. I will be the moderator for our talk today. Let me tell you a little bit about our talk series. It's a talk that brings noted speakers to campus each year to provide the CMKL community with different perspectives and topics of thought. And right now, our talk journey has come to the series of 2022, and we are at the episode 8 in the topic of human AI symbiosis. And our speaker for today that's going to talk about this topic, he is a technologist, scientist, artist, and a PhD candidate at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Please welcome Mr. Pataranutaporn.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I hope everyone can see my screen okay, right? Great. Yeah, so my topic today will be on human AI symbiosis, designing our cyborg future. I always begin my presentation with dinosaur. It represents my research and, different thing. But many times when people think of dinosaur, they think about ancient ideas and, out of date ideas, right? But for me, I see the possibility for the future, especially the future of biodigital symbiosis, the combination of digital system and biological system coming together. A little bit about myself. I'm a PhD student at MIT. My work sort of intersect wearable computing, human AI interaction, and space exploration. I work with NASA and TRISH, which is a subunit of NASA that deal with astronaut health, to think about how do we design technology on the human body that enhance its capability, right? So a little bit about MIT Media Lab. For some of you that haven't heard of this before, MIT Media Lab is a unit at MIT that deal with futuristic technology. So many of the technology that you guys are using today, from touchscreen to like GPS, wearable technology, modern AI, and even Lego robot were developed at the Media Lab many years ago, right? So the lab has the philosophy to sort of invent the future through moonshot research. And to do that, what is unique about MIT Media Lab is the combination of different disciplines, the art, the science, design, and engineering, all of these coming together in the interdisciplinary research that allow us to explore different aspects of the future. And that result in many impactful technology that we are using today. So to begin my talk on human AI symbiosis, I would like to sort of start off with this idea of the paradigm in human-computer interaction, or HCI. So for many people in this area, we always think about the evolution of technology, from mainframe computer, where there are many users to one machine, evolving into a personal computer, right, where you have one user to one machine, to mobile computer, where one user have many machines, and the era of ubiquitous computing, right, where you have many user to many machine, like the like a smart speaker or embedded sensor around the environment, Internet of Things, and things like that, right? So these are the evolution of computing system and how it sort of evolved with the way that user interact with them, right? But now researchers are arguing that we are sort of like entering the next era of human-computer interaction, where computer are integrating with our body, and there's a blur boundary between human and machine, right? And this idea of human-computer integration will be the topic that we discuss today. Many of you, when you heard of this, might think of the term cyborg, right? The something like this, kind of things that you may have seen in science fiction, where you see sort of a creature that is half human and half robot or half machine, right? This is a fascinating and a futuristic idea. But many of you may not know that actually the term cyborg itself came from a scientific community. The term cyborg was coined in a scientific paper in 1960, 9 years before Apollo 11, by two scientists, Manfred Klein and Nathan Klein. They were describing how human can go into space by integrating their body with the technology. And the goal of the cyborg is not to become a robot, but to be more human than ever, to use the machine to allow us to do more, to have higher capability, to be able to think more, feel more and express more, right? That's the goal of Cyborg, to sort of integrate our technology to enhance human capability. And to do that, the principle of Cyborg is to have technology that can sense information from the human body. Can be like physiological data, intent, what the user is doing, any kind of contextual information, and then be able to intervene in the right moment. So the technology can intelligently provide assistance and feedback to the human body, and together create this kind of closed loop assistant where technology is always on, understanding the body and be able to provide the right intervention to enhance the human capability, right? And in my work, in order to achieve the idea of Cyborg, we're intersecting sort of three areas of technology: wearable computing, allowing the computer to attach to the body; generative AI and machine learning, so that the technology can be responsive and be able to respond in different way; and finally, synthetic biology, advancement in genetic engineering and technology that allow us to sort of modify and edit the human body, right? So these three areas, I would talk about them in different projects. These are the three foundations of my research. And today, when we think about Cyborg, I would like to point out maybe different domains that we will discuss. The idea of Cyborg that allows us to explore ourselves better, learn better, make better decisions, stay healthy, and be safe when we're dealing with deceptive AI. So let's get started with the first area. We can think about how the cybernetic system or the cyborg system can allow us to learn better with AI-generated characters. In our group at MIT Media Lab, we are interested in, when humans are interacting with the AI-generated characters that are being driven by AI, especially generative machine learning model. So what is really interesting about these characters is that unlike humanoid robot, or unlike character that you see in video games, these characters are not created by human. They're created through generative model trained on human data. So it can create realistic looking videos and interactive characters that can sort of interact with the user. We sort of, we develop our pipeline that allow the user to be able to take in different information from text to recorded voice, video, in order to generate these characters. And we combine different open source model from, a lip sync, a voice, a lip sync model to a facial animation model, and so on, right? And that allows us to be able to sort of, reanimate image or bring back people from the past to be able to talk and do different kind of thing. This is similar to the idea of deepfakes, but we are kind of using it for positive application. Our paper that explored this topic for AI-generated characters for personalized learning and well-being was recently published in Nature Machine Intelligence, and it's one of the influential paper in this area. And the code is of course available on GitHub if you're interested in exploring. But the highlight of this work is to actually put this kind of technology in action to see different positive application that it can bring about, right? For example, one can imagine using these AI-generated characters for supporting personalized learning. Imagine in the future where you can learn from your favorite characters. Maybe in the future, if you want to learn physics, you can learn from Einstein.
Today, we will learn about quantum mechanics. It is the description of the behavior of matter and light in all its details and, in particular, of the happenings on an atomic scale.
Right. So Einstein never actually give this lecture. We were able to generate him giving this physics lecture using sort of our pipeline. But if you're not interested in learning from Einstein, maybe you can learn from Monroe.
Today, we will learn about quantum.
Today, we will learn about quantum mechanics.
Right. So this is really fascinating. With AI-generated characters, we can create personalized virtual instructor that can teach class and allow people to learn better. We ran a study in 2021 where we have people, half of them learning from a virtual characters that they might admire, for example, Elon Musk, and another one learning from anonymous character. And what we found is that even though the two characters are giving the same lecture, and the participants were informed that these are fake characters, They give the same slide. The one that we did on our study was that the two characters were giving the lecture on vaccine, right? And what was really fascinating is that we see that if the person, really admire the character, that's, even though they're giving the same lecture, they will have a better, significantly better learning experience, right? Here you can see that, based on how much you admire the character, the more that they want to learn advanced material from this instructor, right? We also see that, that also correlate with the sort of the fact that the participant want to also learn and think more deeper about the presentation also. And this is with 134 subjects. So our results pretty generalizable to different research community and group. It showed that when you're learning from a virtual idols or a character that you admire, it can positively impact your learning experience, right? And we can go further than that. So not just generating a character that you want to learn from, we can also sort of personalize the learning lesson also, using the model, the pre-trained generative pre-trained model that are trained on the large corpus of text. We can also convert a lesson that the person is interested in learning into a lesson that is more personalized. For example, we were talking about a generic lesson, right? But if we are having Elon Musk or Iron Man or any character teaching a lesson, we can also sort of like infuse the lesson into the style of the person. So now a lesson actually was taught from sort of an Iron Man perspective. So you're creating sort of personalized lesson. Or if the person is interested in learning like about physics and they love dinosaur, we can give example related to dinosaur, right? So making sort of the learning become more personalized and close to what the student want to learn about, right? So this allows us to sort of generalize and create personalized lesson. What are these example pointing toward? It's showing that in the future we have personalized education where you're not going to learn from the same character, you're not going to learn from the same teacher. The generated character can allow us to have a really personalized learning experience where the teacher can be generated to match the gender, the age, the racial diversity of the student, right? And the lesson can also be personalized as well, incorporating things that the user are excited about, from dinosaur to fictional character giving a lecture, right? This is really fascinating. And yeah, our work that was recently published really highlight the impact of AI-generated characters for the future of online learning, right? And what is really fascinating is that we can also take this character outside of the screen also. Another project that we published in 2020 called Wearable Wisdom look at ways that we can incorporate this generative model in the wearable computing system. So we work with both a glasses company that allow us to sort of use their hardware, right? And what we create is a wearable device that allow people to be able to talk to their mentor or people that they admire, so they can get sort of real-time wisdom and real-time advice on the topic that they are puzzling with, or the thing that they are sort of like thinking about. Like I can ask Einstein question, or I can exercise and get sort of the encouragement from Yoda to continue fighting the dark side. And what is really fascinating about this work is that instead of having one AI that have all the answer, here you are training different AI on different sort of historical or fictional characters, right? So each of them will have a unique perspective on different things, right? Which is really, really interesting. For example, you can ask all of them, how can you be more creative? And Einstein will answer it differently from, Picasso and Marie Curie and Steve Jobs, right? All of them will answer with different sort of wisdom, right? Which is kind of fascinating. And with this platform, we envision the use case of allowing the user to have on-demand, multi-perspective advice. You have to have proactive inspiration and motivation for behavioral change, and allow them to reconnect with individual or personal and cultural heritage, right? You can have a wearable device that embed the recipe of your grandmother on how to cook like pad thai, or how to cook som tam or whatever, And that wearable device will allow you to sort of learn from your sort of personal heritage, right? This is in a way making AI integrating into sort of your daily activity. But sometimes, the most important wisdom doesn't come from other people. It actually comes from yourself. You need to learn sort of, how to be able to sort of talk to yourself and get advice from your own self, right? But sometimes maybe not the current version of yourself, but maybe different version. What if we can learn from our past self, future self, or even the alternative version of ourselves? This is a project that we published last year called Machinoia, Machine of Multiple Me. I was inspired by, the film Godzilla, where Godzilla was fighting three-headed dragon, right? The dragon has three heads, each head has its own personality. So we asked, what if human in the future can have more than one head? And these additional heads are actually powered on AI, trained on the personal data of a person. So what we experiment with was, we create different virtual version of me. One that is more, older, one that is younger, one that is more masculine, one that's more feminine, one that's more progressive, one is more conservative, right? These are all generated by pipeline that I mentioned earlier, the AI generated character pipeline. And these characters, look really, realistic. Like, when I was younger, I kind of look like the video that you saw here, right? These generated character can also sort of, serve as a reflection, different version of a person, but it can also interact with the person also. So behind this, different version of ourselves, we train a machine learning model on social media data. So it can personify a person and be able to predict what would the person in the future or in the past or different version would react. Similar to how we predict weather, we use the trend in the data. For example, here, I was using my last 10 years on social media platform like Facebook to train the model. And the model can predict, my attitude towards certain topic in the future. How would I react to technology? How would I think about Thailand? You see it's go up and down, depending on the government. You can see, my attitude towards school is going, like a roller coaster. And now I'm becoming more positive toward education because now my team really excited about learning, right? And with this, I can sort of use it to power different version of myself. I can ask my future self, what do you think about technology? What do you think about school or research and other type of question also, right? And I can carry these different version of myself with me with a wearable device, right? So I can always kind of talk to different version of myself, which is really fascinating. And maybe in the future, we have a Zoom call with you, with your own self before you make critical decision, right? So the work that we do here in this two areas from learning and self-exploration, really pushing the idea of deepfakes, from tricking people into believing in fake information into what we call deep truth, using deep learning algorithm and AI to uncover something very deep, something that is truthful about the person that the person may not realize or learn about before. We also work on sort of looking at what this character can also teach us, sort of skill that we will never imagine before, right? Like, enhancing our confidence. We did a project with my colleague that was published also last year where, we deepfake ourselves into a confident version of ourselves where we use the driving video that is, someone who speak very well like Obama or Michelle Obama or President Obama or many people, right? And what we found is that when people see a more confident version of themselves, they tend to be less stressed and more confident in delivering their own speech, right? We also see similar ideas when people embody sort of a more creative version of themselves also. And what do I mean by that is that, like in Snapchat, you can put on different filter, right? That could be filter that make you look younger or older or, look like a crazy scientist. We test this with participants and we found that when people are embodying their younger self or the crazy scientist version of themselves by applying the virtual filter on their video, they come up with more creative ideas in the tasks that we give them, right? This is really fascinating because with the increased interest in metaverse, what we show here is that when you are becoming someone else in the metaverse or becoming some altered character in the metaverse, it affects your cognitive performance and change the way that you sort of do tasks in the real world also, right? And there are many other research that also supporting this from the work by our colleague at Stanford, Professor Jeremy Ballinson and Professor Mel Slater. They show that, you know, when you are embodying Einstein, for example, you have an increasing capability in doing some logical and math-related tasks, right? Because in a way, you're biasing yourself toward a positive version of yourself, which is, you know, a technique that has been used all the time in medicine, especially placebo effect, where you give like a fake medicine to trick the body to sort of start healing itself. Right here with AI generated characters and with, you know, a filter, you can trick your body to sort of bias itself into believing that it can do things that maybe you are hesitant to do or, you know, did not believe that you can do it. Right. So these are some of the work that we have done in this area of improving learning and the ability to understand the self better. Another area that is very critical also when we think about sort of human AI symbiosis is how do we use AI to help us make better decision. Traditional way of thinking about it was, you know, how do we make AI that make better decision than human, right? But now the paradigm that we're thinking about is the human AI co-decision making. So putting human brain and AI brain together, we use AI as a second brain to support our decision process, right? You know, there's an idea that was sort of around, you know, for a long time by Daniel Kahneman, who was a Nobel Prize in economics. He described the term system 1 and system 2. You know, human can think very quickly and also think very slowly at the same time. The system 1, you know, is happening when we think very quickly, we make, you know, unconscious decision, automatic decision, but this type of decision are error prone, right? These are like everyday decision that, you know, that allow us to believe in fake news and, you know, make poor decision and so on. But there's also system 2. The system that, you know, is slower, right? It take more effort and is, you know, you need to be conscious to be able to make this kind of decision, right? AI can really come in and support the system 2 very well, especially, you know, in the world where we have a lot of information, we're getting all kind of propaganda, you know, business pitch, advertisement in every form, right? From social media to video to YouTube, influencer. There are a lot of unreasonable, there are a lot of illogical data being thrown at us all the time, right? So in our project, we published in Augmented Humans last year, we look at how can we embed AI to support our rational decision. The project is called Wearable Reasoner. So wearable device that help us reason better. What we did in this project was we trained a machine learning classifier to be able to look at different type of argument, from argument that lack evidence to support them to argument that, you know, provide sound and solid and valid argument, right? And we can achieve that, you know, by training the model on argumentation data set, actually from IBM. You know, they are actually the one that trying to make AI that beat us. They're actually the one that trying to make AI beat us in human AI sort of like debate, but we are actually using it for sort of the human AI symbiosis. And we able to achieve about 80% accuracy and be able to determine whether the argument is sound or not. And what is interesting about this is that we supplement it to the people when they're making a real-time decision. We give them a task to decide whether the information is reasonable or not, whether they agree with it, and whether they're going to make an investment based on that information that they get. And what we found is that, you know, we run so the 3 conditions. One is the control, where we turn the device off and people are just, you know, making their decision on their own. We have a condition where people are making decisions with non-explainable AI. So the AI system that tell you that this is a good argument or bad argument without providing any explanation or feedback, or like, why is this a good explanation or not? And finally, we give the third type of feedback, which is, you know, the type of feedback that many people in AI research are very excited about, the feedback with explanation. So in this case, the AI will tell the user, this is classified as a good argument because it has this certain structure, it has this evidence, or the AI will say that this argument is lacking evidence to support it. That's why it's classified as, a non reasonable argument, right? And what we found is that normally people cannot really make decision at all whether thing is reasonable or not. They make poor decision all the time. But when we give them, non-explainable AI feedback, they're leaning toward reasonable argument increase. But we see a significant increase, and this is really exciting, when AI can provide reason on how and why certain argument is reasonable, right? This is really, it's in a way, it makes sense because you don't want to take feedback from things that cannot explain you why, right? And we see this consistently with agreement also, and and also the decision-making tendency, even though we don't see the significant result in that area. What we found to be really interesting about designing sort of human AI system is that when the AI gives you the reason, it starts to challenge you, challenge your own belief. If someone say, oh, that's not true, and not providing you with any feedback, you can ignore whatever that person said easily. But when the person provides the evidence, it's actually creating conflict in your intuition and really require you to think more critically about a certain topic. And that's why it leads to sort of significant improvement in terms of the decision, right? We think that this is really fascinating. Yeah. And beyond the decision making, one area that we're also looking at is also how do we keep people healthy? Decision is important, learning is important, but if you are not healthy, then none of that would happen, right? We look at, for example, ideas of how we can use sort of AI generated character to allow people to, be able to express their health concern more anonymously. We work on AI project that allow people to be able to, talk to their counselor, to therapists while being anonymous. You can turn off the video, but then the therapist will not be able to see you and not be able to read your emotion, right? But with our approach using AI generated characters, you can still express emotion through someone else's face, to a volunteer face. And the therapist can still read your emotion, can still understand what you're going on, what you're saying, and be able to be sort of preserve privacy at the time, right? And we can also generate virtual character that are very exciting so that it can make the doctor and patient interaction more friendly.
I'm Dr. C. I'll be taking
right?
care of
Especially
you.
with kids.
Is there anything in particular you're coming here today for?
I think it's really magical. You can talk to, maybe a doctor that personify as Disney princess or, author character. But the holy grail of thinking about improving human health, has to do with the ways that we can integrate bio and digital together. So most of the work that I talked about before was about bio becoming more like digital. Sorry, was about digital becoming more like biology, where we make AI generated characters look more and more like living system, right? But the other area of research that I'm conducting at MIT was how do we convert biology becoming more like digital, right? And this has to do a lot with synthetic biology and what I mentioned earlier. I work on project with NASA on designing the future of human space mission, where we create biodigital cyborg, right? And as I said, the cyborg system need to have the sensing capability and the intervention side. During the pandemic, we worked on a project called Wearable Lab on the body that was published in 2019 in IEEE Engineering and Biology and Medicine, where we create a wearable device that can sample fluid from the human body. Many of you go and swap your saliva or your oral sample to test for COVID, right? You need to go to the lab to get tested. But here, what we are looking into is how do we, bring the lab to you? So have the lab on the human body itself, right? We are interested in saliva particularly because saliva, can reveal whether you have COVID or not, but it can also reveal other biomarkers also, biomarkers that related to electrolytes, hormone, enzyme, and so on, right? And what we create, as the name suggests, we're trying to put the lab on the human body. It's a complicated process. This is just an early prototype that we show it's now possible. We create a wearable device that continue to sample from the body put it on paper-based sensor and be able to sort of roll the sensor around, similar to how you measure pH. Here we are measuring different biomarker based on the paper-based sensor that we put in, right? And what the sensor does is that it allows us to look at different biomarkers over time. You can look at changes in different chemical, the concentration, right? So that you can sort of understand what's going on inside the person. And this allows us to sort of also look at the behavior and how the behavior also affect the health of the person also, right? And this is really cool because when you have the device in the mouth, not only that you can tap into the biochemical markers, you can also tap into the accelerometer data also, right? Based on the behavior, like if you're eating, drinking, chewing, you can see, you know, the accelerometer data. And if you see that, oh, the person, you know, is having sort of an increase in glucose or these biomarkers, but when they're eating something, then, you know, maybe that is actually, you know, not coming from the body, but rather from the food intake, right? And this work, as I said, is an early prototype that is showing the possibility of adding, you know, more biochemical sensor to wearable device. You know, you might have like smartwatch or auto wearable before. Most of them target physiological signal like heart rate or respiration. Here we are tapping into new area of biochemical sensor, which is really critical for human space exploration. But, you know, having data is part of it, right? It's just one area. The second area that we look into is the intervention on the human body, right? We are really kind of interested in the molecule that we need to consume in order to stay healthy, from taking caffeine to serotonin to medicine, right? These are molecules that we cannot produce on the human body, right? You know, some of them are actually produced by bacteria today, like insulin that diabetes patients are taking, right? They are produced by genetic engineered bacteria that contain the gene from the human, right? And this allows us to be able to sort of produce different kind of medicine using bacteria. And, you know, as you know, in order for the human body to survive, these molecules are very critical. That's the reason why we take caffeine in the morning to stay alert, or take medicine when we get sick, right? What usually happens is that we you know, use bacteria to produce this medicine at large scale, at the scale for like, you know, 1,000 or even billion of people, right? When we produce vaccine for COVID, we produce them at mass scale. But the future that we envision here is how do we actually embedding bacteria into wearable device so that we can produce medicine on your own body, right? And that, you know, it's a crazy and futuristic vision, but, you know, my advisor is also crazy. My Professor George Church was actually the one that designed and make his own vaccine, and he was in New York Times for that, right? So there are many molecules that we need to produce on the human body. We can think of them as different biological apps that we need to run in our wearable device. So what we create is a wearable device that have a bioreactor embedded in it. And what I mean by bioreactor is a channel that allows the cell to grow inside sort of the wearable device. And the cell that we genetic engineer have the capability of sensing different wavelength of light. So, you know, because there are many molecules to produce, how do we, you know, tell the bacteria what molecule to produce at the time? And the way that we do it here is we genetic engineer bacteria to be able to sense different wavelength. When we shine blue light, the bacteria will activate one genetic pathway. When we shine red light, the bacteria will produce, you know, another molecule by activating the second pathway, and so on, right? We have demonstrated that this is now possible to be able to switch between the molecule based on the wavelength that we expose to the bacteria. And this work, you know, is really exciting. We have, you know, great collaborator at bioengineering department at MIT. And we also show that these bacteria can grow in the fluided device that we design and print with a liquid-based, resin-based 3D printer. This is really exciting. And right now we are sort of exploring how we can integrate this into future astronaut spacesuit. So together we can sense what's going on inside the body, having an AI look at the data, and then decide on what molecule to produce, you know, what medicine to produce on the astronaut body to keep the astronaut stay healthy. And, you know, we run different kind of study. I, you know, had a privilege to go and test this in the zero gravity flight. As you see here, I was, you know, flying freely in zero gravity, testing the sensor and the wearable bioreactor to show that we can actually sense the physiological data from the astronaut and be able to intervene on the human body, right? So this is sort of me, flying in space, which is very exciting. And yeah, we are having the next payload also, with related technology going to the International Space Station very soon. So stay tuned for more work in this area of space exploration. Yeah. So here, we talk about different research here, right? In conclusion, my work think a lot about the idea of cyborg, the idea of human-machine interaction and integration. We look at how this, AI that we create can, teach us, allow us to learn better, to explore, the hidden part of ourselves, to even allow us to talk to, different version of ourselves, the future, the past, and so on, allow us to make better decisions through human AI decision making, especially when the AI can provide explanation to support its decision and prediction. And finally, we look at projects that may be more futuristic. We look at how this human-machine integration can allow us to stay healthy, not just on Earth, but even in space and other places that humans travel to, right? So all of this is pointing toward the idea that, in the future, we should not characterize ourselves as Homo sapien, because the tools that we create are no longer just a tool. The tools that we create are becoming more and more like an organ. They are more and more integrated to our body. We characterize ourselves as Homo sapien as a tool maker, but as we becoming more integrated with machine, we should maybe consider ourselves as Homo symbioticus, because we have symbiotic relationship with bacteria, with AI, with other type of machine learning that are on the human body, right? We no longer make tools. We are creating organs, the biodigital organ that are augmenting our capability. And I think this is really, really important. And the final message I would leave here, we should think of ourselves as a symbiotic being. And with that, I will end my presentation with my favorite thing, which is the cyborg dinosaur. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pat. So let's move to our next session. Okay, now we are at the Q&A session, so please feel free to drop your questions. Okay, let's start at the first question. How far are we from being able to download the information straight to our brain?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's actually one project that I did not show, but maybe I can share now. We did a project also with sort of brain-computer interface, but we were doing it sort of in a weird context. Let me share the screen again. We did this project, to think about sort of brain-computer interface. There are a lot of idea going on right now, from brain reading to brain writing, right? In this project, this is actually a project that we did in Thailand with the Free Lab, which is the futuristic research cluster of Thailand, and it's published in 2019. We look at what happened when brain-computer interface allow us to actually make the food that we like, right? So I think many of you actually in Thailand, when there's a lunchtime, you need to decide what food to get, and it's kind of difficult to make decision because Thailand is full of food, right? There's so many kind of food. In this project, we trained the machine learning to be able to pick up the emotion from the EEG, which is the brain signal from the body, and use that to control the 3D printer. We use, I think it was LSTM or some sort of a sequential machine learning to actually pick up on this sort of sequential brain data and be able to predict the emotion. And when the person sort of has specific kind of emotion, we can kind of map it to specific kind of food that they might want to eat, right? And we will to sort of print different kind of food based on the emotion that the person have. And we have actually we have patent, we have paper on this, and the food come out very cute and interesting. You can print different kind of food or different shape of food based on the emotion of the person, right? And this is kind of fascinating. But here, this is sort of the brain reading part, right? And the device is big, and you need to wear the helmet. I think we have like in this project, we have like 32 electrodes that are picking up different area of the brain, right? This is kind of interesting. But in the future, the writing into the brain part, I think is still very futuristic. There's some research, right now that are actually doing brain stimulation. So you can target the area of the brain, for example, there's an area that help you regulate emotion better, or there's a part that help you make more rational decision. You can stimulate those brain by passing current through electrical coil or to embedding electrode inside the brain. That's called deep brain stimulation, right? But the target is not very specific. Like you cannot like import like a lesson about something into the brain directly. You can just pass more current into a specific part of the brain to boost its capability. And that's what people are doing right now in the area of brain stimulation. So to go back to the question of like how far are we from writing information to the brain, we can do it at a crude level where you can pass current, but we cannot put in specific type of information yet. That's still far from being possible. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's move to the next question. Would it be more comfortable to put the device on the face mask instead of hanging on the sheet?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we actually had a collaborator actually that just published a paper in Nature, biotech, that did just that. They make a sensor attached to the face mask so that when you exhale, right, if your exhale has COVID in it, it will react with the sensor, and the sensor will be able to tell you that you had COVID, right? So there was a project that already came out on that, it's from sort of our collaborator. We were kind of more interested in devices that are sensing saliva, but they're more interested in sort of the more comfortable form factor. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are the security concerns for this device?
Yeah.
What can a hacker do to you if they somehow get control of the wearable devices? Something like that.
Yeah. No, that's a really, really good question. So we know in our group, we think a lot about that question. And there are different ways to handle that, right? So that like technical level, you can make sure that all the machine learning things are happening on device, like that new library for machine learning that, consume low power, can run with sort of, not so fast hardware, right? So you can miniaturize the machine learning model to run on the wearable hardware itself, so it doesn't connect with the internet or doesn't need to have sort of connectivity, right? So that provide sort of one barrier from hacker to hack in, right? So that's one level. Another level that we think a lot about is like, how do we make sure that this technology, when they're attached to the body, can be removed easily? That's one of the reasons that we are interested in like wearable rather than implantable. Because if you're creating implantable, it's like in your skin or in your organ, right? You need to have surgery to remove it. But if we can do it non-invasively on the human body, right? If something go wrong, you just take it out. Like if your glasses is broken, you can just throw it away, right? So that is one way of handling sort of security and privacy concern, right? So making sure that it's running on device, or making sure that it's easy to remove if something go wrong. Yeah.
Okay, let's move to the last question. Please explain more on how to interface to the second brain.
Yeah, that's a really good question also. So when we talk about second brain, right, we're trying to supplement the human brain, the biological one, right? And we do that all the time, right? Like even with our AI, when we talk to one another, we are connecting brain to brain. Like it's a brain to brain interface in a way, right? You are bringing different perspectives together. So the different way that we think about human AI interaction, like, the sci-fi vision would be having AI embed into your brain, right? Which is still very far from being possible. There's some clinical trial on, like what Elon Musk is doing, but it's still very preliminary, like just use an AI to decode you moving the hand or moving the prosthetic, things like that. But to augment sort of higher order intelligence, to augment thinking capability, right? That require language, that require symbolic connection, right? So we can have an AI that listen to everything that's going on and provide feedback so that you think better. You can have an AI that provide you with meta information. Like if you are speaking about something, AI can give you in real time, supplement information, thing to think about. And that what we think that what we call sort of AI as a second brain is supplement your biological brain in real time when you are either making decision or doing creative brainstorming tasks and things like that, right? So that's how we think about sort of human AI interaction.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Park, for sharing us a very, very interesting and wonderful knowledge today. We hope that this time we will have another chance to have you again. Thank you so much. Okay.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay, before we go, let me show my screen. Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, before we go, let me tell you that the application for the AICE program is still open until April 8, 2022. Just share your meaningful ideas by sending us a video with your thought for future AI. You could win the AICE scholarship with up to 2 million baht. And don't miss ARC Open House and Active Recruitment. Reminder to you all that ARC and Open House and Active Recruitment will be on April the 2nd, 2022. A good chance to get to know the ARC program and learn more about whether ARC curriculum, scholarship opportunities, R&D project, and many more. Just scan QR code showing for registration and meet us tomorrow. Okay, and for the info session, for those who still have a question about our AICE, don't worry. This session aims to facilitate students with their step of completing the application form for ARC program. The session consists of the information about required documents and how to complete the application. In addition, the session also provides information about the ARC program and the pathway to the higher education and future career. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this talk and see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you, Mr. Pat, so much. Thank you so much.